like people who lived here said, we want this area to be healthy and we're gonna have to put the dollar down. And they did. And then 4 or 5 years later, in 1909, another group of investors gave money. They bought stock in this company and they built more railroads. Streetcars. Now that's how this community became connected and healthy. Both of us worked in this area. We grew up on North 17th Street, but our uncles owned the Spick and Span Cleaners and Laundry. And as young people, we both worked there. I worked at the plant and Charlie drove the truck. Yeah, the pastor or the priest would be a real trusted part of the community. The business owners, you know, my uncles owned a business and they used to kind of help their employees financially. If they had a little trouble, they'd give them advance on their salaries. And the other people were, and this was true of our neighborhood too, you had your pharmacist. You know, and back then, not everybody could afford to go to the doctor all the time. So the pharmacist was a real key figure in the community. The grocer was a key figure. Those would be the people that made a difference in the community. What made it possible for, say, the Bohemian population to mix with others is the fact that the streetcar went right by here. And you could take a streetcar into the downtown area, or you could go all the way to Florence. As a matter of fact, you could go from Florence, which is way north, you know, down in the northern part of town.
Mormon Bridge
area. You could go on a streetcar from there all the way to South Omaha for a nickel.
The streetcar had a lot to do with that cleaning establishment growing because people came to work by streetcar and they were able to get to a place where they could work and then go home the same way. You asked about the streetcar, or somebody mentioned the streetcar earlier.
Yeah.
That it was a big help. It was a meeting place and a eating place and a drinking place. We used to go there for lunch. I mean, it was a place where kids could go in. Kids, I was 15, 16 years old. We would go in there for lunch and, you know, nobody would bother anybody, things like that. It was not out of the ordinary for a younger person to go into a bar at that time. Now it seems a little, the laws have gotten more stringent.
They were family places.
Yeah.
Bars were basically family places until, I don't know, I suppose the 50s maybe?
That's the way it was in the outskirts, the small towns in the outskirts. They didn't have big social halls or anything like that. They went to the neighborhood bar. Good question.
Yeah. Well, I think
go ahead.
One of the things is that the people settled here because the jobs were here that had to do with the river traffic. The railroad yard was there.
Yeah.
The horse barn was down here for the first horse-drawn streetcars. You know, streetcars were horse-drawn first, and then they were electricity-drawn. So they wanted to settle where their jobs were. Well, eventually, they were settled enough and had worked long enough that they had enough money to buy bigger houses. When those more wealthy people who had the money to build left, then a lot of the houses were, single-family dwellings became maybe 2 or 3 families would move in. And then the housing kind of went down in quality, and it lost value. And when housing loses value, businesses can't make it.
Right.
Well, I think making use of property like this for a studio is the startup is, you know, like we just said, when the housing and the buildings and the businesses go downhill and nobody takes care of them, then everything loses value. The property loses value and people don't want to live there. So I think if we want our areas in Omaha to be alive and healthy and economically strong, we have to just rebuild and renew the buildings and keep transportation available.
From 13th Street to 16th Street, there's no growth. There's no building per se. From 10th Street down to the river and north, there is huge apartment buildings going up. The old homes are being torn down, and there's many, many, many apartments on 10th Street. Why? Transportation right down to the old market, and the old market right into the downtown area. This area has the potential to grow once a developer decides, I can build this apartment house here and draw these younger people into this area because they want to live near the area down here.